Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor.
I'd just like to add to that, Madam Mayor, that we have a post office that's recently turned into a shop, and also the cafe gallery on the foot of Mount Clay, and also the upgrade to the Narrawong store. And I'm sure all the residents are waiting in anticipation for that to open to get a bottle of wine or have a cup of coffee or just socialise at the Narrawong store. So it really is a growing community and we should support them.
Thank you, Councillor Alistair. Councillor Carr.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to make a few comments. Look, firstly, I'd like to thank the Narrawong District Association for their petition and thank the 89 people, and I went through them all. All of them are Narrawong residents. To get 89 people from one community to agree on what the priorities are for their region is absolutely fantastic.
Absolutely.
This sends a clear message to council if we are going to do work out that way, which we should, where that effort needs to go, and the community's going to support us.
Yep.
So I really do thank Narrawong District Association and Mr Herbison for sending this petition into council.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Narrawong is without a doubt one of the higher growing areas in the Shire, councillors, as we know that. Some of these roads that have obviously the petition there, it's not the first time it's come to council. It's actually comes to council quite regularly about looking at these roads. The track from Portland to Narrawong, walking track, cycling track, that's definitely something that a lot of councillors have supported. Obviously now tracks and trails as well, so it does get picked up there. We currently got the community plan out at Narrawong and Alistair as well, so I'm hoping that the community has put that input into that plan as well, so not only this petition backs up here, but it backs up the plan that hopefully will come to council as well, Madam Mayor. So fully supportive of what we need to do in Narrawong going forward. That's having that evidence-based data to back it up to say, yes, we do need to do upgrades to roads because the traffic is increasing and the town is increasing, so that data will hopefully back it up and we'll see those, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillors, the resolution was moved by Councillor Wilson and seconded by Councillor Alistair McDonald. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. The next, councillors, is a notice of motion that I submitted for myself. It's there on page 14.
Madam Mayor.
Over to me. Thank you. That in accordance with Council's governance rules, section 26, I give notice of my intention to move the following motion to the council meeting to be held this evening on the 28th of May. The council requests a report from the Chief Executive Officer on the development of a study to assess the opportunities and impacts of the renewable energy development in the Glenelg Shire that will consider the following: supply chain jobs and skills, housing and accommodation, infrastructure, community readiness. And number two, that report considers the different stakeholders that need to be involved and opportunities for funding of this study. And number three, that the report be brought back to council within the next 2 months. Do I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillors, just some comments on the motion. As I've circulated an email to you previously, this is just to have a strategic report be brought to council on all of the activities, whether that be all of those developments that we've had in the last few months, which is, you know, the Yambar, the Coles, the Bunnings, all of those jobs in association with that. And of course, then we have offshore wind that's being proposed for years to come. We've talked about this, about housing, about infrastructure and our community readiness, but we have to also look at council's readiness and perhaps the demand on council services. But let's get a report and let's start the process going, is what this motion is about this evening. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I second what you've just said. Portland, Glenelg Shire, we are going to expand. There's absolutely no doubt about that. There's hundreds of jobs attached to everything that you just announced, and there's thousands of jobs attached to the renewable sector. We must be strategic. That is our job. It is the role of council, and we do need some help, and we do need some funding to have that strategic outlook. So I thank you for bringing this motion to the table.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for bringing this motion to council. I do have one sort of, I guess, query or concern is that actually we're bringing the report back to council for the next 2 months. Obviously, there's a small time constraint there, so I'd be happy if the CEO can sort of provide any commentary towards that.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Best endeavours. Certainly we've got to get that done probably within 6 weeks to get it back on the agenda. So this is a report that will cover off on the works that are happening today, the stakeholders that are involved, where we might be able to apply for some funding for, and provide a guide to council for council to consider a bit more detail about where to go from here. So we would hope to be able to bring that within that period, but that's going to be tight. I'm conscious of caretaker and council wants to consider this motion while you're here.
I think it's definitely needed, Madam Mayor.
Thank
Also,
you, CEO.
part of our governance rules, 26.4, when we do want a bigger study, it does call for a report, which is what you're doing here, and that sort of guidelines and what we want to do and the expenses that are going to be required for that kind of study. So it's not the study that we do want to do is not going to be a small job. It's going to be quite a large undertaking, and we need to know what's involved with that. So thank you, Madam Mayor, for bringing this.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Yes, this is the first step in a process, so it just needs to, we need to start somewhere, and I just feel that we just need to start this process so that we can start to understand and unpack what this actually looks like, and just have that ready, as I call it, the readiness and impact of renewable energy in the Glenelg Shire. It might involve other things, but let's see what the report actually comes to the table at. The motion has been... Oh, sorry, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to add to fellow councillors' comments. My congratulations on your forward thinking. I think this is quite great for our community to see what opportunities lies ahead. We need to know what grants are out there from both federal and state. So we need to do our diligence, get our reports in, so we can hit those grant opportunities. We can hit the state and federal governments for the assistance that we will require. And in doing that, we have existing businesses that are strongly in connection with renewable energy, as well as partly attached. We will be supporting these to the best of our ability, and not only that, we'll be encouraging newer businesses to not only Portland but to the Shire as well. So it may not seem much at the start, Madam Mayor, but this report will start the trigger for this council for going forward to see what best we can get out of the emerging renewable energy sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. And Councillor Wilson, I did omit to remind councillors, let's not forget that the $150 million of the Maroona Portland upgrade is also going to drive opportunities for this region for growth as well. Councillors, it is there on the table. It's been moved by myself and second by Councillor Carr. Those in favour? Thank you. Councillors, management reports. Item number 10.1 on tonight's agenda is the Glenelg Shire Financial Report for April 2024. There is a motion, there's a recommendation there on page 15, councillors. Oh, sorry. Mr. Hall, I apologise. You should just yell louder next to get my attention. Sorry, David.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you,
Mayor.
Mr Hall.
Some key points on the finance report this month. Total income has increased 1 million to 57.9. That's about 1.7 million ahead of forecast, mainly due to the Roadster recovery that was prepaid, I mentioned last month,
Yes.
and also the funding agreement received for the gymnastics work. Total expenditure, 4.3 million to $46 million now. Although we're $1.4 million less than forecast, about $1 million of that relates to employee costs, particularly vacancies. Our materials and services, Madam Mayor, is now only about 400k under forecast. It was quite a long way further than that previously, so that's certainly gaining up as we're back-ended towards this financial year. With that, our cash position at the end of the month was still considerably higher at 12.5 million, but is expected to reduce significantly in June. I think we had about 700k spent on capital through the month of April. I just know that our creditor run just earlier this week, I think, had $2.5 million in capital just in that. So as you can see, it's going to have an impact come towards the end of the financial year. Although our capital works, where recently been some more projects that now with delays in contractor and tender processes are unlikely to be finished in 23-24 as we'd hoped. We're looking at an extra $1.8 million to carry forward into 24-25. There still is some $8 million worth of capital works to be completed throughout the months of May and June, which are underway at the moment. At this point in time, we're not anticipated to have to draw down the loan until late June at best at this particular time, obviously pending how that capital works goes. With that in mind, the loan or the balance of the loan will need to be transferred to the 24-25 budget to enable us to draw it down post 1st of July as we catch up on capital works in the next financial year. The report highlights a change to our forecast position. So getting towards the end of the year, reviewing what's not going to come in and what's not going to be expended before the end of the year. We did have an amount that councillors would be aware of there for our priority project. Obviously that's not going to be funded by the 30th of June. So in order to understand our cash flow position, that's been taken out of the forecast. And again, there's a lot of materials that won't be expended by the 30th of June as well, which will have an impact on that forecast amount. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Hall. Any questions? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr Hall, just note under the statement of capital works, there's a bit of commentary there. It's estimated that 5.7 million of property capital works will not be completed, as you mentioned before. Does that involve the multi-purpose, I'm assuming it would involve the multi-purpose building on the foreshore? I don't know, when we were putting that through council, there were some time constraints with contracts and we needed to do that in a timely manner. Is that affect there? And are there any penalties? What's the story there?
Through Madam Mayor, so the response to the first part of the question, yes, I think that entirety, $5.7 million, is related to the multi-purpose centre. As for the timing of the contract works, I'd probably defer to the Director of Infrastructure to provide a response to that.
Yes,
Mr.
thank
Husband.
you. Through the Mayor. Councillor, good question. That process is ticking along quite nicely. In fact, we're keeping RDB and DECA informed along the way. The project is on schedule. We've asked for a variation in terms of that schedule timing, and there are no penalties involved at this point.
Good to hear.
Further questions? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. And look, thank you, Mr Hall, for the update. Re the borrowings of 7 million. Not borrowing 7 million. Well, I know I ask this every month, and we're borrowing 7 million every month for the last 4 months, and now we're not borrowing it. We have a draft budget out. How are we going to manage the materiality clause if we don't borrow it and we want to add 7 million back in?
The advice we've passed that through our internal auditors, which undertake an interim audit at this point in time. Because it's not actually adjusting the expenditure from one year to another. It's the same process as what's occurred, as you've highlighted, for a number of years. The key point is that council is not able to draw down a loan if it's not included in its adopted budget. So if we don't put it in the 24-25 budget, we won't be able to have sufficient funds to go forward.
Which, yeah, it's the risk I raised when we were doing the budget, just around the materiality clause of moving things more than $500,000, which we've been advised of previously.
Yeah, and through the chair, so Madam Mayor, that does not change the particularly the cash position or the budget as far as the expenditure. It's simply carrying it forward from 23-24 to 24-25.
Well, the cash position will change. Sorry. Anyway, we won't argue about it right now. Sorry, Madam Mayor, look, we can see that we didn't need to borrow the $7 million all the way along. We get told that we're going to borrow it, and we get to June every year and we don't borrow it. Like, it's just the way in which we communicate it. It's confusing at times, even for someone who looks at the finances every month. So I'll need to work on how we do that going forward.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to sort of, I guess, add a bit of commentary to Councillor Carr's there. Is the reason for that $7 million is that we haven't necessarily done our asset upgrade, and the money required there to actually chip it in to pay for those projects? Is that there's a bit of delay there, and that's causing the issue with the $7 million?
Essentially, yes. It's through our capital works delivery. As we've mentioned, particularly over previous years, we've had a extremely high capital program. There was a number of funding streams with LRCI. Essentially, we stretched ourselves more than what we could deliver, what suppliers could actually deliver on time as well, and also in regards to the cost of materials, as we've talked about before. So, ideally, yes, we would not want to be having to carry forward. We'd want to spend our capital works within the year that is listed for. And again, with the draft budget that is being proposed, it's very, the undertaking for capital works is much more minimal than what it has been over the past, so that we can actually catch up on capital works and not be in a position to not draw down the loan because we've still got that money in the bank.
Any further questions, councillors?
Yeah,
Councillor Carr.
One last question. So the federal government, have they announced yet when their financial assistance grants, what they are and when they may or may not be paid for next year? Because historically we've got them in June.
Through the Mayor, a bit of yes and no. So we've received a letter with indicative amounts about what's going to be paid. However, it has not been confirmed exactly when it'll be paid at this point in time.
Okay. What is that indicative amount, and when historically has that been paid?
The total amount is, I think, somewhere between about $11 odd million.
11, yep.
Including the general purpose and the roads grant. Typically, that's been paid during May or June in the past few years. But as I said, the advice we got only this week, Councillor says they're still waiting to confirm when that payment will be and how much of it would be expected early.
Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just sort of, I guess, Councillor Carr, follow on to Councillor Carr again, because that was a very good question. How does that track on the previous years? And I know it's very hard to do like for like. I know you see you're smiling there. Are they keeping up with, I guess we'll call it inflation, but are they increasing, or are we seeing now a decrease, a potential decrease, and a shortfall in some funding that councils are now going to be laboured with? Sorry, big question, Mr. Hull.
It's not. It's not going to be an easy. It's not a simple response as what you might like. Generally, last year there was an extra payment for underpayment received through the capital grants. When we look at what the indicative figure is this year, it's based on the figure that occurred before the extra payment. So if we just looked at it in isolation, it would show an increase of 5%. But if we look at it at actuals, it's actually a couple $100,000 less if you take out the extra payment.
Any further questions? Councillor Northcote.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I've been following the $1 million that was promised to the gymnastic club upgrade, and I see they've got 500,000. Is any? I'm pleased to see that anyway, but is anything likely to be happening to get close to the $1 million they were promised?
Again, through the Mayor, if you're talking about project delivery, I might defer to Mr Husbands to respond on that.
Mr Husband.
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor, for that question. That project is progressing and we expect that to reach the full budget amount. It's still going through the stages of setting up that project for implementation.
Thank you.
No further questions?
Can I just clarify that announcement was
Councillor
1.2 million for the gymnastics,
1.2.
and they've only paid 500. So are we expecting the additional 700,000?
Yes, there's more to come.
Thank you.
Councillor, yes.
Good question.
Okay, is any further questions, councillors? If not, there's a recommendation there on page 15. Councillor Alistair McDonald.
Madam Mayor, the recommendation that Council receives a financial report for the period ending April 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
I'll second that, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you wish to say anything, Councillor Alistair McDonald?
I think
Enough's been said.
we've heard enough.
Okay.
Councillors did a fantastic job in asking a lot of questions, Madam Mayor, and I thank the officers for some really good responses and providing valuable information, not only for councillors but the community.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Alistair McDonald, second by Councillor Martin. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to item 10.2, the Animal Welfare Centre Transition Update. Mr Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The report outlines the history of Council's animal welfare arrangements as part of Council's statutory duty to maintain a pound for domestic animals. Glenelg Shire formed an arrangement with the RSPCA and the Warrnambool City Council several years ago. The Warrnambool City Council and the RSPCA arrangement is ceasing. There is an opportunity for Glenelg to build on the relationship with the Warrnambool City Council with a mutual operational and financial benefit. This proposed collaboration with Warrnambool City Council is supported by the Local Government Act, but does require council approval for a market exemption under council's procurement policy.
Thank you, Mr Hall. Are there any questions in relation to this item this evening? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you. Mr Hall, it was actually quite interesting reading about this and the background there and about an 84Y, which I had no idea what that was, and I had to look up on the government website. It was very informative. And I'm hoping you might be able to ask this question, but one acronym I couldn't work out was CFCN. I don't suppose you can help me out with that one?
CFCN. Not without the context.
No, that's okay. I'll leave that as a mystery for myself. Mr Hall, is there any other businesses within the Shire that are 84Y credentialed? Other than council, like the vets or the mutts and mogs or anything like that, where domestic animals could be temporarily housed before they go to Warrnambool?
There's not through the Mayor, there's not actually a current one that we have an agreement. So an 84Y is a agreement under the Domestic Animals Act to provide services such as pound services. The part of the arrangement in the MOU with Warrnambool City Council is identifying a number of parties such as that. Regrettably, animal numbers are increasing and capacity to house and rehome animals is limited. So the more options that we can actually have to give these animals an opportunity for rehoming and rehousing, the better. But as our history shows us, if I go back to mid-2016, in this particular area, there's only been the RSPCA who's been tendering for such services. And similar to us with the Warrnambool City Council arrangement now, is they're ceasing arrangement with a supplier and trying to do it in-house to try and mitigate costs for providing a service.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you for that commentary, Mr. Holmes. I know we looked before the Animal Welfare League, which were based in SA, weren't going to come over here and help us out. And I was really, like you said, the RSPCA that were limited there. Obviously, Warrnambool's looking to transition. Have we tried to work with Moyne, Southern Gramps and perhaps Corangamite as a joint funding effort to, I won't call it a super pound, but a facility where we can all contribute to the costs so those costs are reduced?
Yes.
No, are you allowed to elaborate on that outcome at all or not?
So we did certainly have super pound discussions with all neighbouring councils. Some were reluctant to be involved. There has been a change in one particular council at the moment who are actively looking at joining the Warrnambool and Glenelg arrangement. Again, that will be helping in finances, but there still is capacity issues. Warrnambool City Council are upgrading their animal welfare facility. The price of that is increasing as we speak, so while those works are actually going, there will also be an opportunity for Glenelg and perhaps another council to provide some temporary housing and may even be with staffing arrangements to ensure capacity is done with that. But yes, we've certainly had open channels with pretty much every council in our region.
Yep. Does that include across the border potentially as well or not?
No, across the border, unfortunately, there's a whole different set of legislative and provisions.
Okay, fair enough. If I may continue, sure. I'm glad you sort of mentioned costs, Mr. Holmes. I noticed, and obviously joining councils and reducing those costs, because I think under this contract, hopefully it's not, it should be in the preamble here. It was about, it is up to $250,000 per annum. Is that correct?
That is correct. So $250,000 is what is agreement. It's in the public open, so it's fine there, which is a similar amount to what we currently pay under the arrangement we've had for the last few years. Yep. That doesn't include a cost that we actually have for running and staffing our Darts Road facility and the initial collection of animals that are provided to council. And
transportation costs that are the whole 9 yards. So I also noticed in there, sorry, Madam Mayor, that there was actually a limit put on the agreement of about 400 animals per year, is that correct? Which works out to be about a cost, at best cost for us, $625 per animal, roughly something like that, per year, which is eye-watering when you think about that. And if we don't come up to that 400, it's then more of a cost per animal that needs to get moved or rehomed or anything like that. It's quite a large cost, Madam Mayor. Council's certainly not in this to make any money. We lose quite a bit of money.
Unfortunately, it's a statutory function of Councillor Martin. Any further questions? Councillor Robert McDonald.
Director Hall, could I just ask you, is there any concern about the ongoing lease at Darts Road through the RSPCA now that the ties with the RSPCA are being cut in the arrangement with Warrnambool?
Through the Chair, so we have quite still an amicable arrangement with the RSPCA, even with their transition out of Warrnambool. So there's nothing to suggest that they will change the leasing arrangements. We do have another best part of 12 months left on the current lease, and there's been nothing to suggest that that will be unavailable going forward.
Because we'd be very reliant on an alternative facility if that was the case to continue the partnership with Warrnambool.
So we obviously have need to provide an initial location to house animals before they are transported. So if that were to become unavailable, yes, we'd have to seek alternative arrangements. And
do we still have volunteers involved in that facility?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Question on the facility, Madam Mayor. Did council sell that facility to the RSPCA for a minimal peppercorn rate?
The council sold the land, Councillor Wilson, for $1 for the RSPCA to establish the facility there in about 20 odd years ago, I think.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Mr. Hall, Just refresh my memory, how much would it cost if council went alone in relation to providing this service locally per annum?
Significantly a lot more than what we're currently providing. I would look at when we last went out to tender, which was probably best part of 3 years ago now, councillor. The tender cost from the contractor there was, I think, the best part of $200,000 more than what it was providing. So our arrangement with Warrnambool City Council and RSPCA negated that particular increase, and the proposal we've got here is actually maintaining those costs, whilst elsewhere in the industry those costs for animal welfare are escalating rapidly.
Councillor Cole.
Yes, thanks Madam Mayor and thanks David, and I probably just want to acknowledge the staff who have worked on this MOU and been part of that process for the past 3 years. This is a good example of where council's been able to work with its neighbours to reduce expenditure that this council, you know, is statutory required to provide. So congratulations, and you know, well done on getting this MOU to the table for us to vote on tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Thank you, Mr Hall. Councillor Alistair.
Madam Mayor, it wasn't that long ago that the RSPCA wanted about $1.2 million off us to run the show, wasn't it?
Something like that, Councillor Alistair. Yes, this sort of flooded back memories of some very interesting conversations in relation to our statutory requirements.
700,000 we could do it.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Councillors, if there's no further questions, there is a recommendation there on page 17 for consideration. Councillor Robin McDonald.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move that the recommendation that Council 1 authorises the Glenelg Shire Council to participate in accordance with the Memorandum of Understanding with the Warrnambool City Council for the provision of domestic animal services. 2, authorises the market engagement exemption to enable this procurement to be undertaken. 3, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate terms and extensions and execute all documents relating to the Memorandum of Understanding. 4, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to complete all financial payments and endorse accumulative variations up to the Chief Executive Officer's financial delegation. 5, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate ongoing terms with the RSPCA for the lease of the Darts Road facility to align with the Memorandum of Understanding.
Do you have a second? Thank you, Councillor Alistair McDonald. Councillor Robin, did you want to make any commentary?
I'd just like to also thank the staff for the work that's been done on this, and I do recall those very large amounts that
Yes.
some years back that we were looking at facing, and again working with our neighbours to come up with solutions to reduce our costs in regional areas is an excellent solution and an excellent outcome for us. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's been moved by Councillor Robin McDonald and seconded by Councillor Alistair McDonald. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Hall. 10.3, councillors, the Glenelg Shire Plan Third Quarter Performance Report 2023-24. Ms Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to go straight to any questions from the councillor group for the directors on this report.
Thank you. Councillors?
I just have
Councillor Robin.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I just have one on behalf of several concerned members of the community about the planting at Bridgewater, whether or not a specific species might grow to 2 metres and block their view. I know nothing about planting, but I was assured by several people out there the other day that that particular plant will grow to 2 metres, and I assured them that in those conditions it probably won't. But I just see that the performance report talks about the planting being due, and I see that it has been done. So I'd just like to put those concerns to bed if possible through.
Through the Mayor.
Mr Husband.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd be happy to take that species on notice and do some more investigation for you. But the whole planning program was actually approved by DECA as well as our in-house people who are experts in that area, but happy to follow that one up for you.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions of Ms Miller? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wouldn't mind just going through a couple of questions. Obviously, this is our third quarter report, so it's the premiership quarter for our council plan, so it's important that any hold-ups that we should actually ask some questions to see where we're at. So I'll just pick a couple that I've sort of got itemised here, Madam Mayor. On page 23, Ms Miller, it mentions the health food option during the community grants criteria, which coincidentally we have got coming up tonight. Any more info on that? What's the go with that? What's the aim of that?
Thank you, Councillor Martin, through the Mayor. That would be picked up through the review of the community grant scheme with the next suite of guidelines for round 1 and round 2 in the next financial year.
Fantastic. Madam Mayor, page 30, the thermal loop, mention's been delayed, but we've actually got potentially some movement there. I don't know if you can provide any commentary there on page 30 with that delayment.
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor. There was a delay. We had to do some redesign work on that particular project, but yes, it is moving along.
Fantastic. Also notice page 31, which regards to our transport aims of this councillor group. There's a lot of cautions or oranges there. And obviously being in the media at the moment, we've got obviously state hands there. We've got some issues with some trains. We need to be bussed. But for our aims, Ms Miller, is there any sort of commentary you could provide there with a lot of the hold-ups? On page 31, so movement in between towns, buses, passenger services, feasibility studies.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Martin. There's nothing been actioned. I will note we've had not a fully functioning economic development team for quite some time, so there's a fair bit of work to work through in the next period of time with this section of the plan to come up to speed. So probably, unless Director Husband had something specifically around the airport he would like to say.
Yeah, through the Mayor, Councillor, we've had a number of minor queries about the airport capacity over the last few months, so we're still pursuing some of those, and hopefully we can make some progress, but nothing definite at this point in time.
Fantastic. And I know obviously we're having some issues, or had some issues with personnel, because one of the ones that I think is very important on page 34 was a Great Southwest Walk and our endeavours to actually have some usable data tracking some numbers. I know that's a big draw card for the area, and a very expansive walk, fantastic walk. Any commentary there, whether we're able to sort of continue that aim?
Yeah, this one I don't know if
IT,
you've got anything around the Internet of Things to comment on there with that one.
Not specifically.
Yeah, so again, I mean, just broadly, we've had a lull in tourism events and economic development personnel, so some of the actions relating to that will take a little bit of time to come back up online.
That's certainly understandable, Ms Miller. The last one, Madam Mayor, was actually on page 44, so it was actually a really good thing, but I'd love to find some more information about. We've got our 3 iconic events, but the Sandford Bush Festival, so that was on page 40. You had some commentary there, so I don't know whether Council's able to provide a bit more of expansive information, because I think it's got a lot of potential.
So I'm coming up to speed, Councillor Martin. With
That's all right, no, that's
page.
fine. Sorry, I did, picking that sort of page there.
Yeah, and we also provided some community grant funding for that festival as well. I don't have anything more specifically to add to that. I didn't attend the festival. I'm not sure if any of the councillors attended that one this year, but yeah, we've got community grant funding to support that event.
Fantastic. Thank you, bro.
That's right, Councillor Martin. They have received community grants every year for the last 3 years since they commenced. I think it's their 3rd year this year.
Yep.
Councillor Northcote.
I have a question, Madam Mayor, on page 12 in regard to the electric vehicle charging stations at council facilities. I suppose I'd like to, understand how many EV service power charging stations there, but I understand, I must have been in a conversation somewhere, that the vandals are making some of these EV stations unusable. So any perhaps comments there? One, I suppose, has there been how many stations are here in Portland, and on the vandalism side of things, if that indeed happens.
Mr. Husband.
Through the Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. Good question. There is one station in Portland. There's also some private providers that have put their own stations around the Shire as well. There's one in Caston. Unaware of any vandalism of any particular units in the Shire, but I'm happy to receive further information if you have something on that.
Yep, thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to touch base on our priority projects. We're 3 years into a 4-year plan. 2 of the projects, the multi-purpose sporting facility, basketball stadium, and the aquatic strategy, which is swimming pool upgrades, Portland and Hayward. Is it time we, the comments there, we continue to monitor and review funding opportunities? Have we got to change our strategy, Madam Mayor, in relation to how we attack these projects? Because we're going to get to the end of the plan and it looks like we're not going to have made much progress, or as much progress as we would have liked in this space. So I think the sit and wait option is probably done. It's time to review how we attack them as a group, and I know we don't have long left in this council term, but we need to learn from it and potentially go about it a different way.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Well, that will certainly be something for the new council, won't it, when they develop their council plan, and let's hope that they perhaps have the same desire for those same projects as priorities. Councillors, any further questions? If there's no further questions, there's a recommendation on page 20. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that Council endorses the Glenelg Shire Council Plan third quarter performance report for the year for the year 3 of the 2021-2025 Council Plan, and approves the document for publication, Madam Mayor.
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carr.
Just a very quick comment, Madam Mayor. I know I was picking a lot of the, thank you, Ms Miller, for providing a lot of information there, but it is our responsibility as councillors to bring out our 4-year plan and us to track and follow it. It's up to the CEO and the executives to actually carry out that, and it's our role to sort of hold them to account and ask those questions. So I'd like to thank the officers for their fantastic work, because there is very little that's being held up, and what is being held up is out of our control. So I think that the CEO, take the credit as the CEO now, doing a very good job, Mr CEO. For your 1 week you've been here.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Credit where credit.
Yes.
No further comment.
Thank you, councillors. I'll put the motion. It's been moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Carr. Those in favour? Carried. And thank you, Ms Miller, and please pass on to all the staff, please, thank you for their support throughout the process, and to the CEO, of course. Councillors, we'll move on to 10.4, the Glenelg Shire Food and Fibre Strategy. Ms Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Glenelg Shire Council Food and Fibre Strategy was developed to support new opportunities in agriculture, forestry and fishing in the Shire, as well as create alignment to the regional work of the Food and Fibre Great South Coast. The strategy was workshopped with councillors during late 2022 and changes to the strategy were made. However, the final version was not formally adopted by council. The strategy presented in the agenda tonight for adoption has the changes from 2022, as well as some minor track changes identified from the new economic development team. The main change being that council do not form a food and fibre steering group as outlined, as this adds another layer of governance to the progression of the strategy. The recommendation is council continue to support the Food and Fibre Great South Coast through our annual contribution to the regional body, along with other southwest councils and industry partners. This recommendation and approach is listed in our council plan on page 23, which is to deliver a food and fibre strategy and to partner with Great South Coast Food and Fibre Council to grow and support the region's primary producers. Through the food and fibre strategy, we can continue to undertake local work as it arises in the areas of freight, capacity building, planning and land use considerations, carbon neutral potential and advocacy for a reliable digital network for the whole of the Shire. There is a recommendation for Council to adopt the food and fibre strategy, and I present the strategy for adoption. And happy to take questions, comments or feedback. Questions, councillors? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that report, Ms Miller. I know something this is some councillors have concerned with, I'm a little bit concerned with. The actual report itself is quite outdated. We're looking at some data that's back from 16, 17, I think, somewhere in that report there, where it references that information. Is there more up-to-date information, and how do you go about getting it, and is it easy to do?
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor Martin. Look, what I would recommend the council do is adopt the strategy and do a 12-month review with the new council and the new council plan. Some of the figures would have been from the 2021 census, and some other figures would have been taken locally from various reports, industries, organisations, etc. So it is a complex process to pull the data together.
It's not easy.
Councillors? Councillors, go on. Councillor Carr.
Do I have any questions? I'm happy to move a motion though.
Councillors, I'll just make the commentary. This came through from the council plan, and look, I thank staff for putting this forward. It came about because ministers would come to us and say, what's your food and fibre status in the Glenelg Shire? And it was very hard for us to quantify that. So, look, I thank the staff for putting this report together, and it certainly shows the powerhouse that the Glenelg Shire is in food and fibre, and certainly gives us something as a platform to start on. And, you know, maybe it could have a review within the next 12 months to update some of those figures that are in here, and whether the ABARES data will be improved in the next 12 months. We would hope that we could pick up some of that new data. So, look, thank you, but it certainly gives us something as a platform to work from moving forward. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I move that we lay it on the table.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that?
Oh, well, I'll second it.
Councillor Carr, Councillor Northcote, a second that we lay it on the table. I'll put that motion then. If there doesn't, Councillor Carr,
like
do you want to talk to that motion or not?
Madam Mayor,
Yep.
point of order.
Can't talk to it.
We have a motion on the table that cannot be spoken to. It needs to be voted on.
Okay, I'll vote on. Sorry,
So,
thank you.
I've forgotten the name.
Yeah, that's right.
Procedural motion.
Procedural motion.
Procedural.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I've got the fingers going up here. Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilson. I'm wondering why they're putting their fingers up. Councillors, it's been moved to lay it on the table by Councillor Carr, second by Councillor Northcote. Those in favour? Two, that's right. Did you want a division?
Who's in for it?
Who's voting?
For it is two, Councillor Carr and
Who's against it then?
Who's against? Oh, sorry, against it. Sorry, Councillor Wilson. Sorry, I'm tired. Okay, thank you. Motion's lost. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move a recommendation that the council formally adopts the Glenelg Shire Food and Fibre Strategy, enabling council to actively partner with Food and Fibre Great South Coast, as outlined in the Council Plan 21-25. That's part one. Part two is that it is brought back to council in 12 months with an updated report.
The council review it in 12 months' time?
Yes. Well, maybe part of that works.
Madam Mayor, I'll support the motion if Councillor Martin would, with point two, say that the strategy be reviewed in 2025, and then they've got as long or as short as possible, and the strategy should be reviewed.
I think that Councillor Wilson's got a better idea, because it could be shorter, and I shouldn't push it out longer than it may need to be.
Are we clear on that, Mr. Hall? Thank you. Thank you. would you like to talk to that, Councillor?
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I won't need to stand. I understand where Councillor Carr and Councillor Northcott are coming from with regards to laying on the table, because it's not...
Point of order. We haven't spoken against or for it.
No, it's up to Councillor Martin.
It's up to Councillor Martin. He's moved the motion.
Yes, he's speaking on our behalf.
No.
Councillor Martin, continue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand your sentiments, Councillor Carr and Councillor Northcott, that maybe this might not be the most ideal document that hasn't got the updated figures. I'm hoping that's maybe where you're going with that. But we do need to have a food and fibre plan, because when we do want to go for any amounts of money from the government, we do need to have something there to show that we are in this space, but also aligns with the food and fibre Great South Coast. And I think this is a really important, when farmers come to us and go, look, what is council doing for the primary industry? This is a great example of what we aim to do for that particular industry. We want to value add post-farm gate, Madam Mayor. And I think there was going off of memory here, in the report, or in the Great South Coast report, for our little patch here, we generate around $3.2 billion. Now, compare that to a similar patch in, I think, Netherlands. Similar conditions, land mass, they are able to generate $150 billion. Now, that's quite a substantial difference. So that's telling me, Madam Mayor, that we need to be doing better, and we need to encourage that growth for primary production. So that's why this is an important document, not only for us, but the Great South Coast, as you've spoken to it. I could go on for quite a while quoting facts and figures, which I'd have written down, but Madam Mayor, I think it's important Councillor Wilson or others speak to it. Sorry, Councillor
I'll
Wilson.
chair the meeting. Thank you, Councillor Martin. Does anyone else wish to speak against the motion?
Madam Mayor, I'm not necessarily speaking against the motion, but making probably a bit of a statement. It's going to be a very challenging year in the food and fibre strategy in the Glenelg Shire. The little village of Merino has had its driest start to the year in 120 years. There was a field day up at Nareen where they catered for 40 people in drought feeding of live pregnant ewes, and there was 280 people turned up, sevenfold. So there's a whole story happening out there when you're down here and looking at the sea, and south of Hayward's green. It's, even if it's green, there's not much there. So we'll just see how good the food and fibre strategy is after we collect the dust, and let's all pray for rain this week. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I do thank Councillor Martin for a lot of the stats that he's brought forward. Madam Mayor, I've been waiting for a strategy to come to this table for probably 10 to 15 years. The formation of the Great South Coast many years ago had a food and fibre part of that makeup. And Madam Mayor, it seemed that whatever Glenelg wanted to put into that regional strategy, it fell on deaf ears. So they didn't realise and didn't want to realise that we grow wood chips, or trees for wood chips and the like. So it is a very important document, and I understand that it's taken a long period of time to get to this point, and that's why some of the figures are outdated, and that's why we need to ensure that it does get updated in the next 12 to 18 months. Madam Mayor, without a strategy, we can't advocate to state or federal government. So it is important for this council to endorse this strategy, so we can advocate for our farmers, we can advocate for all the manufacturing industries that work in the fibre industry. So I do say to councillors that don't be afraid of voting for this because of the outdated figures. Vote for it because our industry needs it.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any further comments? Councillor Khan.
No, it's right.
No, thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I suppose just to clarify, look, yes, we did look at it back in 2022. We got a revised version last Thursday and have reread it and was really hoping to lay it on the table to give us 4 weeks to update the numbers. I'm 100% supportive of this council having a food and fibre strategy. What I don't like is that we then take it and give it to people with outdated information. I think it could do. I'm worried about the optics around that. We go and use this document as our strategy when we advocate, when we're looking for funding in this sector, and the information is 2016, 2017, 2021, 2022. We're now in 2024. Hence I wanted to lay it on the table, give us 4 weeks, update what we could, bring it back in 4 weeks' time and adopt it. I honestly didn't think 4 weeks would impact having a strategy or not. Hence, I would have liked the councillors to support laying on the table, but they didn't. And that's why I moved to lay it on the table.
Thank you. Do you want to answer how long it would take to update the information? If I asked you a question. So, CEO, if we were going to update the information, how much work would be involved in that immediately?
Mayor and councillors, more than 4 weeks I would suggest to do it properly. This information is in a lot of different places, and to do it well I think it's better to take more time and get the data that is accurate and going to present well in the report. So I understand what Councillor Carr is saying. I get every bit of that, but we've got what we've got. I think it's important to move forward quickly, and I think our 12 months sort of by the end of 25 should give plenty of time to accumulate that information and update this again.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Write a reply if we could.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. And I was going to ask that very question, so thank you, Madam Mayor, for asking that question. And I think Councillor Northcott makes an excellent point that even though it's great having a policy here, there's some real-world implications when farmers are going to be doing it tough. And you mentioned water. The Great South Coast is working really hard, and in that document there, it mentions it works really hard on trying to unlock a significant underutilisation of groundwater, and that's one of its key advocacy pieces, and that's in our document here, to actually get some real-world benefits. They do have to advocate to the state government, Madam Mayor, and it's an ongoing battle. But that's why we have this document. That's why we pay membership into these groups to actually do this advocacy, to actually get real-world applications for it. So I can certainly understand Councillor Northcott's concerns with what's coming up for the primary production sector.
Thank you, councillors. Councillors, the motion has been moved by Councillor Martin, second by Councillor Wilson. Those in favour? Those against? Councillor Carr. Do you want a division, Councillor Carr? No. You happy with that? Thank you. Councillors, 10.5 is the community funding and support policy. I do have a conflict in this matter. I'll call for a chair. Councillor Carr.
I'd like to move that Councillor Wilson takes the chair, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Their seconder, please. Councillor Martin. Those in favour? Carried. Councillor Wilson, do you want to remain where you are? Or do you want to come up here?
Fine here.
Yes, it's fine as long as I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. 10.5 is community funding and support policy, and I invite the Director of Community Services, Ms Miller, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. The current community grants policy was adopted by Council in 2008, so it's very well and truly overdue for a review. The draft policy presented introduces for the community a way to bring together all the different aspects of Council's community funding and support into one place, making it clearer for the community to understand the different types of support available. There's some high-level changes outlined in the report attached to the policy, but two changes of note are the proposed introduction of an ageing well funding stream. That's in the draft 24-25 budget at a $50,000 allowance. And we've also included a nominal amount of funds that can be auspiced by an incorporated association without affecting the overall funding amount for that organisation under the community grant scheme. The policy's also included two new clauses on conflict of interest and decision-making responsibilities and delegations, and it's tried to be less prescriptive and more high-level, where easy-to-read guidelines will be developed under each grant program. The reason for this is it provides more accessibility in the wording for community when they're making the application than trying to interpret a high-level policy. So we're trying to hit those accessibility and inclusive targets with that as well. It also provides the council greater flexibility each budget cycle, so in regards to the funding levels and programs, without having to bring the policy back every time for review. The draft policy is recommended to be approved for community engagement, so we can get some feedback for over a 3-week period and strengthen and bolster the policy based on that feedback. So we would like to do that, present it back to council in July, so we've got it in preparation for the next round of community grants for 24-25.
Thank you, Ms Miller. Are there any questions? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, Chair Wilson. Good luck. Just a quick question. Well, actually, it was more of a, I guess it is a question. It's fantastic to see ageing well funding stream. Ms Miller, that's something new. Would you like to elaborate what that's for, how that's come about? Any information that you can provide the councillors and the public would be fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Martin. With the transition out of Age and Disability Services, Council obviously need to have a look at how we're providing some support for senior people in our community. So this is really a starting point to see how this goes. The staff have also been working on an ageing well framework in the background to go with it. So we can start to do some work with the senior group and hopefully partner with some organisations to do so.
Fantastic. That's good to hear.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Chair Wilson. Ms Miller, will we be removing any red tape that volunteer groups encounter applying for these grants?
We haven't had any feedback on red tape, but definitely if that comes through in the consultation period, we'll have a look at how we can simplify the process for sure.
So just to clarify, will the process be similar or does it require more effort?
The community grants application process, is that what you're referring to,
yes,
Councillor
we'll talk about community grants.
Look, it would be very similar. I think it's a really robust process with really good assessment and decision making at council now. So if we can make the application form simpler or the engagement with the assessing officers during the process, yeah, we'd be interested to hear that feedback from the community.
Thank you.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Ms Miller, I know there's been some commentary maybe from a few years ago, but we'll run with that, about groups that aren't potentially incorporated, smaller groups that desperately need maybe a small amount of funding. How does this policy go about helping those particular groups?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Martin. We've listened to that feedback which has come through the councillor group, and we've introduced a new aspect to the community grants policy, which enables an incorporated association to auspice $500, which is a nice figure for some of those smaller groups to access some, tools or services or things that they may want to use, but doesn't impact on the incorporated association's funding application itself. So their actual capped figure of $5,000.
Yeah. So, Ms Miller, in theory, say if the Portland Tourism Association needs $5,000 for whatever it needs to do. But another smaller, say, sporting group that obviously may not be incorporated has an event that may bring a couple of hundred people. Could they then, in theory, hit the Tourism Association up because that is tourism there and they could potentially get some money to help them out with their event? Is that the idea of it?
Yes, it is, and it happens a lot. There's a lot of little small groups, you know, craft groups and things like that, social groups that might need some equipment or some resources, and when they approach a larger incorporated association, it's been impacting on their ability to apply for the full amount of funds. So the example you've outlined would be, what would be expecting to occur.
Yep. Final question, Mr. Chair. Obviously, we have this particular line of questioning is for the community grants rounds. But what about for smaller organisations throughout the year that may need them there and then? They might have an event that's come to them in the next week, or say, for example, is there an opportunity for them to apply for any money at all, or is there an avenue for that? How could that potentially work?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Martin. We've got the minor community grants round, which is open all year, and groups can apply for up to $500 through that round at any point in time.
Fantastic.
Any further questions? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. In terms of the community grants, in the existing policy there was a weightings criteria which was fairly open and transparent. How will that be treated under the new proposal?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Carr. That's a good question. That would all be picked up in the guidelines that I referred to, so we would move some of that so it's less prescriptive in the policy and the guidelines pick up some of that detail.
Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. Is it possible to delay the community consultation period until the 3rd of June?
I've actually printed out, Councillor Carr, my timeline with this because it's very tight due to caretaker. So we would like to run the grants, round one of the community grants program, and have that awarded before the caretaker period. So at the moment we're looking at bringing it back to council in July. So can you just refer me on your question again with the date? What was?
If we start on the 3rd of June.
What have we got at the moment in the... Go back to my
At the
notes.
moment it's starting on the 29th of May.
29th of May. Yeah.
Next week.
So is there...
I've got to expand. I mean, we're asking about January 26 funding and all that in the middle of reconciliation week, and I don't think it's appropriate. I'd like to delay it until after reconciliation week. Is that possible?
It would make the timelines tight, and at the moment we've got a 3-week consultation period, so that would pull it back to 2.
Is 2 weeks still within our guidelines, Ms. Miller?
We don't have a prescriptive amount in our community engagement guidelines, but I think 3 weeks is enough for community groups. Potentially they may have a meeting during that time. It just gives them a little bit longer if they would like to meet and discuss the policy, but that's a decision for council if you'd like to pull it back to the 2 weeks.
Personally, I'd like to, yes.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Right, no questions on it. Okay, we have a motion on the agenda. Councillor Alistair McDonald.
Mr Chair, I'd like to move that council commence the community engagement process in accordance with council's community engagement policy.
Thank you. A seconder?
Flag an alternate motion.
A seconder?
I'm happy to second that.
Councillor
Martin.
Martin.
I'd like to have known what you were doing.
Councillor Carr, do you wish to move an amendment?
Yeah, I'd just like to delay the consultation period until the 3rd of June, that's all. Commencement of the consultation period.
I ask for a seconder of that motion.
Second?
No seconder, therefore...
I'll second that.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Right, the amendment is on the
Can I
table.
just have a point of just clarification? So we're moving that particular recommendation as dot point 1 and then dot point 2 that we start that process at a specific day. What's the story? Sorry, just clarification.
I think, point of order, you've already got a motion on the table that was seconded. I just flagged an alternate, should it not get up?
So what was that's right, just clarifying what's the alternative exactly?
The alternative is to match the recommendation, add an additional dot point that we delay going out for community the consultation period till the 3rd of June.
Councillor
Which is
Carr.
next Monday.
It's only next Monday.
Councillor Carr, are you moving an amendment or are you foreshadowing a new motion?
Amendment to the motion.
It is an amendment. And are you
Accepting the first line?
accepting the first line, and the second dot point will be to delay till the 3rd of June?
Correct.
Okay. Are all councillors clear on that? The amendment is for the delay to the 3rd of June.
We don't, today's the 28th of May, so we're only delaying it for 6 days. So,
Councillor Carr, you may wish to speak to your motion and may...
I just think it's poor, the optics, and it's poor timing to go out during reconciliation week, given some of the matters that are in this
Mr.
policy.
Chair,
Councillor,
I'm more than happy to put in a dot point there to put it out on the 3rd of June, to change that recommendation.
so you'll be supporting
Yeah,
the
obviously.
amendment?
Yeah.
We've got that right to do that.
Just to move forward, it's 6 days. I don't think in the grand scheme of things it's going to make too much difference.
And I'm happy to follow Councillor McDonald's recommendation for that amendment.
Do you wish to speak about the document at all?
It's fine.
Okay. Are there any other speakers for or against? Okay. We'll vote for the amendment. Those in favour of the amendment?
That will be the 3rd of June.
Those against? It's carried unanimously. Now the amendment is the motion. Those in favour of the motion? Those against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Motion to restart, Chair.
Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Councillor Wilson, for doing that.
Yes, sir.
10.6, the Glenelg Shire Council response to the Minister for Local Government. Councillors,
Very quickly, Mayor,
Yep.
if I may.
Yes.
The municipal monitors appointed to Glenelg Shire Council made a report to the Minister, which had some recommendations in it. The Minister has responded to the Council and asked the Council to provide an action plan responding to those recommendations. We've had some conversation about that over the last couple of weeks, and a draft action plan has been presented for consideration by Council.
thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillors? Any commentary?
Just questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, okay. I'll go first. In relation to recommendation number 2, the question time should be conducted at the end of a council meeting to minimise disruption. Given the changes that have occurred, in the comments it says governance rules adopted include provisions around format of questions, maximum length of questions and submission deadlines prior to scheduled council meetings. This has resulted in an improvement in the conduct of council meetings. Is it still required to have question time at the end? I feel like I'm not supportive of having it at the end. I feel like it's, the community come, we want them to come to our meetings, we want them to ask questions and we want to give them answers. And, to sit through the whole meeting, waiting for that. I'd prefer to give them the answers at the start, and then they can choose. And if they ask questions about an item that's on the agenda, it might actually help us make better decisions as councillors. That's my view on that one. So if there's any more context that I'm missing in relation to why question time should be at the end, I'd like to understand that if possible.
Through you, Mayor, I think that was a question.
I think it was. It was a very long-winded question or statement.
This action plan's been based on what's been put in place, and I think that's been working from what I can gather. I've only been here a very short period. That's up to the council in the future as to how it structures its agenda. So we've placed this in here for now. If the council by resolution wants to adjust that later on at some stage, that's up to you. But we wanted to base this on what's been put in place and what's been agreed by council at this point in time.
Yeah. And Councillor Carr, I mean, on the premise that this meeting is about the conduct of council's business, and any individual within the community can contact myself or any councillor at any time throughout the month, any day, either by phone, email or in person. So there's plenty of opportunity there. This is what we have, the structure at this particular current time, and as the CEO has indicated, you know, the next council may decide that it may do things differently. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a query, Mr CEO, just for clarification with governance rules. By council resolution, we can change the order of the council meeting, is that correct? So in theory, if we put through the motion, we could actually bring each meeting, we could bring that question time forward at the start of the meeting, if there is particular agenda items.
Councillor Martin, that's correct. We've discussed this before, and we can bring it forward at the wishes of council. We have decided that the question time, as a council, we decided that we would put it at the end of the meeting, and that's what we've resolved at this stage.
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Any further questions, councillors? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, just in relation to the timeline, Madam Mayor and CEO, a lot of the training requirements for the current councillor group is August 2023. 24, thank you. We go into caretaker mode, or council goes into caretaker mode in September. Just the cost and optics around doing all that training or investing all that effort into the current councillor group, given that in 4 to 6 week time we go into caretaker mode, and you know, you will or you may have a new council after the election. Is there any commentary on that we need to understand?
Mr. CEO.
If I may, Mayor, thank you. Yes, I understand where you're coming from. This council's got 4 months to run in a decision-making mode before caretaker period. I think the optics for the minister would be that this council wants to take some action and take it straight away, and should engage in training and some of this work, which will then flow into the new council and be part of an induction program. So my recommendation to you would be to make sure that training action is put in place to make sure that everyone's on the same level of understanding of things like confidential items, conflict of interest, all of those matters that are listed in here. So our recommendation to you is to undertake some of that training in the term of this council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors?
I suppose,
Councillor
Madam
Northcote.
Mayor, in response to that, you could say there could be a lot of benefit for the whole council group and the community with the experience of the councillors for, you know, in many cases like yourself, nearly 5 terms. I think, well, that could that be then passed on to the new group of councillors elected in October.
Thank you, Councillor Northcote. Any further questions, councillors? There is a recommendation there on page 26.
Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor?
Yes?
Sorry, I didn't hear your response. I'll move that Council 1 approves the action plan in response to the letter from the Minister for Local Government on the 9 recommendations raised by the Municipal Monitor Report, and 2, submits his action plan in response to the Minister for Local Government.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Alistair McDonald. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's only right that we do respond to the Minister. It's we might get sacked if we don't, but we as a body, a local government body, need to provide the best governance that we can for our community, and reach the right decisions that should be reached in the appropriate manner. The monitors have proven their worth by assisting this council to ensure good governance and to guide us to even better practices. And I certainly thank the monitors for that. But Madam Mayor, I thank all those that were involved with setting up our processes and what we can and can't do, and I'll certainly look forward to a little bit of training for the little time I have left. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Alistair.
No, I've got nothing further to add, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. Councillors, look, I just may take a note to comment. Look, council has owned this, and the monitors coming into council has been, as I have said from the beginning, it could only be a benefit to this council. The governance around, and we see this across the state, the governance, it is about the professionalism and the respect around this council. And I hope that going through this process that it has delivered some of that professionalism and respect back to this council in reviewing our governance rules and ensuring that this council abide by those rules. Whether I'm on the next council or not, I just hope that the council gets stronger because of this experience. And we look forward to a bright and happy future for the community of the Glenelg Shire. Councillors, I'll put it forward to you. It's been moved by Councillor Wilson and second by Councillor Alistair. Those in favour? Thank you, councillors, and thank you, staff, and thank you, Mr. CEO. Thank you, monitors. And I shall get that off to the Minister. Councillors, item 11, urgent business. If there's no urgent business, we'll move to question time, and I shall do my best in reading the full question as it is written. Number 1 is local laws, budget and governance. Mr. Gary Hom of Portland has asked the following question. We have a worsening problem with dog faeces on public walkways. Clifftop and beach walkers are increasingly dodging dog poo, including near child playgrounds. Council Executive recently advised me of their statutory responsibilities, including their obligations of health and safety in public spaces under the Public Health and Wellbeing Act of 2008, hence the need for enforcing compliance. I have yet to see any patrols or presence by the local laws department. Over the past 2 years, how many incidents have local laws officers fined or prosecuted dog owners for failing to comply to these dog poo regulations? I can advise Mr. Hum that the local laws officers are continually undertaking proactive patrols throughout the Shire to address compliance on a number of issues. This is based on priorities, current issues, known incidents. Although the customer may not have seen these patrols, it does not mean that they are not occurring. There are 4 local law officers patrolling some over 6,000 square kilometres of the council area. The local law staff have advised that while over the last 2 years there have been a combined 85 domestic animal prosecutions and infringements, council officers have not been able to confirm non-compliance with the specific local law's provision during this period in relation to dog faeces to enable prosecution. It is important to note that cleaning up after the dog is part of the responsibility of a pet owner. Your second question is, with the up-and-coming budget suggesting yet another rate rise, the community is justifiably concerned over the past 3 years we have witnessed. 2020, a greater than 19% rate rise. 2023, 3.2% rate rise. 5-figure unplanned, unbudgeted expenditure items. Budget cost blowouts of more than 30%. 2024, draw down $7 million loan to cover wages. Further rate rises forecast. Green bins and Watertown Muir both decline. This produces a projected average 3-year rate increase of more than 8% annually. Why should our community, considering this emerging pattern, have confidence in these current financial strategies? Firstly, Mr. Hum, there are factual inaccuracies in the premise of these questions. As highlighted in the budget discussions, council costs have been increasing at a greater amount than the rate cap. The community have confidence that the current financial strategies of minimising unnecessary expenditure, limiting further debt, maintaining service delivery levels and standards, whilst achieving all of this within the rate cap, now reflects prudent financial management. And the third question, the Cape Bridgewater Pacific Hydro Wind Farm Supreme Court process, VSC 254, costs were reported in council as more than $200,000. And considering the cost of Supreme Court matters, including the unplanned and unbudgeted adjunct cost, details withheld, it could quite possibly have costs between $350,000 and $500,000. This Supreme Court action resulted because council representatives prematurely sought to seek changes to the Act before an ongoing VCAT appeal had concluded, thus triggering a Supreme Court challenge with cost awarded against the council. What mechanisms are now in place to ensure that there is no repeat of this administrative error? Again, this question the resident has provided a question with inaccuracies and context. The biased allegation against council failed at the Supreme Court, and therefore there was no administrative fault to consider. Questions on the CEO contract from Mr. Matthew Jallett from Portland. First question. Like most residents, I was pleased to hear that council has recently appointed a new CEO. Without divulging and confidential information in regards to this case, how long generally would a CEO contract term be for? Generally across the industry, CEO contracts are provided for 5 years, which is the maximum term under the Local Government Act. Your second question is in relation to footpath trading permit feedback. With the new fee that has been proposed for the footpath trading permit, how many objections has the council received on this subject? I can confirm that we've received 23 feedback responses to the recent draft budget relating specifically to the footpath trading fees. These will be considered by council at the June council meeting. Thank you for your questions. Councillors, confidential reports, there is a recommendation there on page 28 to hear those.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. A seconder, please. Councillor Martin. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you for those members of the gallery. We will now go in camera to look at these contracts, etc., that will remain, that are confidential in their discussions.